Welcome to Backwoods Pursuit. I'm Gabe Garish, and today I'm going to show you how to set up the White Duck Alpha wall tent step by step. This is the 12 by 14 version, but the same applies for all the other sizes. I'm also going to show you a custom modification that we made during our setup. One of the complaints I've read about these tents is that they have a floating floor, and so they do allow some critters to get in. The floor does cover the entire inside, but it doesn't seal. It's not sewn to the walls. So we made a modification. I'm going to show you exactly what that is so you can make it for yourself if you so desire. Check out our website, backwoods.pursuit.com. Tons of gear reviews over there, as well as our social media accounts. I'll put links to all those down in the description, as well as a link to this White Duck Alpha wall tent so you can check it out for yourself. Let's get started. Now the Alpha tent is going to come in two bags. One bag here has the tent and the floor, the canvas and the floor. The other bag has the poles and the stakes. And so to get started, we're going to start with the poles and the stakes bag and pull those out and separate them into the different sizes and styles. All right, I pulled everything out of the bag here, all of the poles and stakes here, and here's the pieces that we're dealing with. We've got silver brackets, and this is a four-way bracket, and then there are two three-way brackets. The three-way brackets go on the farthest end away from the door, and all of the four-way brackets are the ones that connect the poles along the length of both side walls. The gold brackets are the ones that are used on the very peak of the tent. There's one three-way bracket and three four-way brackets. Of course, this is the 12 by 14. It may be different if you're using this for one of the other sizes, but the three-way bracket goes on the part of the peak that is farthest from the door. The three awning pieces here, these extensions give you that little bit of extra length that take care of the awning of the tent and give you a little bit of coverage there. The longest pieces here are the ones that go from the very peak of the tent down to the walls. Those shorter tubular pieces are the part that you build the rest of the frame with. And then the long pieces here, these are the feet that go down to the ground there and then up to the wall of the tent here before the tent goes up to the peak. So those are all the pieces you're dealing with. Once you kind of get an idea and a handle on what goes where, it actually goes really, really quick. Okay, first thing you can do here is lay out generally the frame, the way that's going to go together. You can do this, and really if you want to do it the first time you set it up, that's certainly advisable. Once you kind of get an idea of which pieces go where, you really don't need to do this step, but just for sake of the video here to show you how this generally goes, that's what we did. So we aligned the golden stakes here being the center portion, and then you just again make sure that this three-way is on the very back. This is going to be the back of the tent. That is going to be the front up there. So we'll start here and just insert that, make sure it's pushed all the way in, and then just go through and make sure that each of these are connected all the way and put them all together. And it goes really, really quick. Putting the roof portion here together, you'll kind of snap into place in a positive manner, and then you'll get that all the way done. And that's the roof line, the peak of the roof again. It might seem odd, but this four-way here this is the way you want it. This is going to be the door of the tent, because that awning piece here is going to come out and give us a little bit of covering over the door. All right, we got all of those pieces put together, the center frame and then the two sides here. So the next step is to grab the longer pieces. We used all the shorter pieces for that portion, the longer portion of putting those brackets together. Now this is the longer piece, and we're going to grab it and put it on right on here, and make sure that you've got the button piece there. There's button pieces on the underneath side of these brackets. On these ones, you're going to have to push that button and make sure that that locks into place positively. So you're going to do that there, and then do the same over here on the wall. And again, this button may or may not be oriented the right way, so you may have to twist it so that it goes into that locking position there. And then that's going to allow a positive locking into place so that the button or the pole won't come out. All right, so grab another long piece here, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on all these pieces, both sides coming down. Again, these are long ones going both ends off of the top of the tent here, which is this piece right here in the middle. And we'll get that to lock right in place. And it'll click positively. Go to the outside here and go one to the next until those are all in place, and then you'll have the A-frame completed on the main portion of the tent. All right, so this is what the frame is going to look like once you get it all put together. Again, the long pieces here coming down from the peak to the walls, the gold brackets on top, the silver ones here on the two walls, and again, leave the four-way bracket here pointing out because we're going to put those shorter pieces right here, right there, and right there. But from here, there's two different ways to get the canvas on to the top of the frame here. The first one that we've done that worked really well is to go ahead and put the canvas on now. When it's in this A-frame, it's the easiest to get the canvas on, but you want to make sure you have two people to do that so that you can have people lifting in two different sides once the canvas is on. The other way to do it is to grab these and put one side wall, put the feet on just one side, and then put the canvas on. It's a little harder to get the canvas onto the frame doing it that way, but it gives you less of a chance of bending anything with the frame. So you can pick which way you want to do it. We're going to go ahead and put the canvas on right now, show you how that works, and then get the rest of it put on together and get this thing set up. All right, now when you get the tent out of the bag here, you'll notice that this here is, the walls here are folded up onto the tent. That's the way that you want to repack this to make this part of the setup easy. So this is going to make this portion, sliding it over the frame, a little bit easier if you leave all of this folded into the top of the tent, so you can just grab the corners. This here, of course, is the inside of the tent still, but the walls here are going to, once we get over the frame, we're going to take it down over the frame and then tuck it in. So make sure you leave the walls folded up like this when you're putting it over the top of the frame. All right, so you can see we got the canvas over the frame here, but again, the walls and the doors are still folded up on top of the frame. That's going to make lifting this up to get the legs on the side here a lot easier. So we're going to go ahead and get two of us now, because we're doing it in this manner where the top of the, where we don't put the legs on prior to the canvas. So we're putting the canvas on prior to all four of the legs here on one side. So make sure you have two people doing it this way. Two people are best either way, but this does work a little bit easier. As you saw, getting the canvas on there was pretty easy with two of us doing it this way. Now for this part, we're going to grab a corner here and then skip one of these supports. So you're going to go on one person on every other support, and then you're going to lift at the same time and have your foot here ready to go. So then when you get this lifted up high enough, it kind of pivots it up on to the other side of the wall. That way you're not bending the frame, and you have two people here to support the size and the weight of the canvas. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and lift this at the same time. And again, you're going to have those little buttons here that are going to allow you to make sure that that goes all the way up into the frame. There aren't not the push buttons on these ones, and so it makes it a little bit easier. So once you got that, don't put it all the way in just yet. We're just going to get the supports here, and it's really pretty easy just with two people to do it that way, and that way you're not going to bend anything. Get the remaining two supports. Again, if you have a larger tent, you're going to have more than the two here. Smaller might be less. But that allows you to get this one side put up, and then we're going to do the other side now. So at this point, before you put this second wall up, you want to take your awning pieces here, or not necessarily all of them, set one of them there. You can do the two on the walls here after the tent is up, but it's pretty difficult to do so on this peak because it's a pretty tall awning here. So it's a lot easier to go ahead and get this done while the tent is down in this downed position. You can either do this before you do either of the walls, or once you get this one side up like this. That way you don't have to try to find a step stool or a stump or something to climb up and get this high piece here. Now the second thing you want to do before you erect that last wall, come inside the tent here, and you'll see up in the canvas you've got these Velcro sleeves right here that are supposed to attach around the very top of the tent. Again, these are kind of difficult to do if you wait until it's all the way up. You have to find a step stool or something, but this will also give you a good frame of reference for where this canvas is supposed to be. So I like to do this while the tent is still in this position, and it's easy to get to these Velcro pieces. You don't have to put these up, of course. It just gives you better wind stability, so it's a good idea to do that. And then it also allows you to really orient the canvas really well while you're in here, and start that way. So those are the things I like to do inside the tent here before we get that last wall put up. Now, just like we did on the other side, we're gonna have two of us over here, and I'll be on one corner, and then we're gonna skip one support and go to the next one, so we have two people lifting evenly for this last part, because of course the weight of the canvas is now on the frame. We don't want to just lift one corner and bend a other portion of the frame. So we're going to lift at the same time. Make sure again you've got your feet here laid out so you can grab them easily. You don't have to walk away, because the tent's not incredibly stable at this point till you get everything situated. And this is another one of the reasons why it's nice to have this canvas flipped up until you get these feet put on here. Now you can roll this down, roll the door down over, and you can, again, a good place to start here. It's nice that we already put those Velcro pieces on the top, so we know that's centered. It's going to make this part a little bit easier. You can go ahead and grab your short piece here. This is for the awning. Put that in there, and then you have your little your tie here that's going to aid in keeping that in place as well, and then be what you attach your awning to, an awning piece here too. So put the canvas down there and do the same on the other side. All right, we have the canvas draped over, got the awning pieces on, the legs in place. You'll notice now that this is kind of this lane here. Now this is the mud flap. You want this to go to the inside of the tent, and then we'll stake it down on the inside of the tent, but you want that to go on the inside. The ground sheet will go over the top of that, and this will give you a better resistance to any kind of moisture or water if it starts raining on you. But this does get tucked into the inside of the tent, and then we go on the inside and finish up the setup there. Now, of course, you have all of these guy out points here. It's good to start in the corners, do each of the four corners, and you want to guy these out in line with the seams. They'll give you the most stability or the most strength from the fabric itself. But I like to start and do each of the corners, and then go and finish up the rest of them here. The stakes are nice and sturdy, and they have a real nice guy line system here that glides really nice and easy to give you a really secure pitch on the tent. Now, as far as the stakes, they're going to come in a nice carry bag like this to keep everything organized, but you're going to have three different kinds of stakes. The largest ones here are for the guy outs, because the guy outs are going to carry the heaviest load. So you want the largest ones for that. The second largest ones, which are essentially look like a piece of bent rebar, those ones are going to be around the foot of the tent. And then it also came with these eyelet type of stakes, which I ended up not using because of the modification that we made. I replaced those with a little L-shaped little pin to keep that mud flap down on the interior. That's what that is for. And because of that modification that I made, I'll show you in just a minute, this was going to work a little bit better. So I just picked these up off of Amazon, put a link to these down in the description, so you can pick some of those up if you want to do that modification as well. So once you've got all the guy outs staked and the foot pegs staked out, if you think you might find yourself in really windy conditions or have a heavy snow load on the tent, it's a good idea to go ahead and install this steel cable. This is just going to go and provide extra support to the frame. It's going to attach to the 3 points here of the frame by the front, by the door, and they're going to give you that extra wind and snow load protection. Now, to install this, you're going to take one of the long sides of the cable with the hook there and go through the hole with the sharp or pointy end towards you. This is going to keep that edge from rubbing its way through that canvas and help protect the canvas as long as possible. Now, once you've got the cable hooked in on the one side, I would next do the peak, or start on the peak and then do the two sides. And the reason being that the third connection here is likely going to have or require a little bit of adjustment to get the frame set just right, so that you have a little bit of tension on the frame, and you might have to pull in on this and get that to snap into place. And so you don't want to be doing that when you're trying to do that up high on the peak of the tent. So start on the peak or on one side, then the peak, and then do the third side. Now, if you like the floor, you can put the floor in now. You don't certainly have to. Most folks are going to prefer to have the floor in there. It is a ground sheet, and it's a floating ground sheet. So what that means is that it does not attach to the rest of the tent. There have been some complaints from folks on bugs getting into the tent, or potentially mice or snakes or even moisture. So we came up with a solution for that. I'm going to show you what that is, how to secure that floating ground sheet to the tent itself to make it nearly bug proof and make it a lot more pleasant if you're in an area that has a lot of bugs or you really want to keep those critters out and not get in the tent. Now to do this modification, a couple of simple steps. We're effectively going to attach the floating ground sheet, which is what the Alpha wall tents come with. We're going to attach those to the mud flaps that curve into the interior of the tent here. We're going to do that using Velcro. But before we get started on the Velcro, we have to make a couple of quick modifications to those mud flaps. So let's look at those first here. All right, now to go ahead and get this fit a little bit better, we have the mud flap here turning into the tent. And we have, of course, the leg from the tent coming down right there. Now we found that the best way for this orientation is to have this loop right here on pointing toward the exterior of the tent, so that when we cut this vinyl flap here, it's going to give a better connection for the elastic strap. So we're going to cut this right, not all the way to the canvas here, but about an inch and a half away from that, and use our scissors and go ahead and cut this in as much of a straight line as we can. Again, it's not super critical, but then once we get fairly close to that, I'm going to cut just a little bit of a V to make room for the pull, and that'll give us a little bit better fit with that pull. So cut a little bit of V there. Then we are able to come and cinch this in. It's going to be able to wrap around here. This can keep bugs out just a little bit better, but also is going to leave room for us to still strap that down and leave for a nice connection there. All right, now for the corner, again, we're going to have this pointing towards the exterior of the wall. That can allow us to latch that elastic down really nicely. Now in the corners, you're going to find a lot of extra material here. So what I found to work really well for this is to fold this underneath kind of each side, but that's still going to allow you to wrap around that pull well. So fold that underneath, fold that underneath. So it's not sticking to the outside of the tent, but then also allows you to get a nice connection around the pole and keep bugs out in a better way. So once we get each of the mud flap here cut with each of the wall pulls here, the alignment, to keep it somewhat consistent, you're going to align each of these stakes for the mud flap with the exterior wall pulls here. That'll give you a pretty consistent alignment. So go ahead and put that in there, and then on this side here, it doesn't have to be exact, but that'll give you a rough point of reference as you're going all the way around the tent with those mud flap stakes. Once you have those cuts made in the mud flap, we're now going to install the Velcro both on the mud flap and on the underneath side of the floating ground sheet. Now to install the Velcro, we're going to start here at the front door, and we're going to do this section from the front door over to the corner, and then the same over on this corner. We're going to cut a couple of strips of this Velcro here. I'll put a link to that in the description. If you want to go ahead and do this step, it's not necessary, but this does help seal out any bugs if you are in an area where bugs are a concern. It'll keep the floor nice and snug to that mud flap that's underneath. For orientation, we still want a little bit of this bathtub floor. That way, if water were to happen to seep underneath the tent, we want that to potentially, if there is any water, there shouldn't be, but if there were any water to come in, it wouldn't go up over the floor and then into the tent here. So we're going to attach the Velcro a little bit back here onto the mud flap here, and then a couple inches, maybe 3 inches or so off of the edge of the ground sheet itself. So it's going to end up sitting like this, but just attached to the mud flap. So the easiest reference that I was able to find here using our roll of Velcro is to go ahead and put this pretty close to the grommets right here. So right on this side of the grommet, that way you have a reference point throughout when you're sticking this down. And it's just going to be right in front of these grommets as you go across the entire length and width of the tent. You'll go ahead and attach that down right there. All right, to get the second layer of Velcro here on the ground sheet, we line the ground sheet up in the tent as we want it, fold it back, and then to make this process easy, we're going to start with this hook side and put this onto the ground sheet and just work our way around the entire edge of the tent. and just going to leave this a little bit of a gap here so that when we fold this back over, the hook attaches to the soft side. So to do that, go ahead and peel our Velcro, get that started, and line that up so that it is going to attach once this is all done. And just work your way across this section of the ground sheet, pulling the backing off of that tape, and then you'll have a nice secure connection. Make sure there's no wrinkles in the floor here in the ground sheet, otherwise you won't get as good of an adhesion, and you'll pull that Velcro off when you go to remove the floor. So just do this, work your way all the way around the whole tent. All right, now the last part to this is that we've got our Velcro here stuck on to, this is the mud flap, and of course we got to put it on the floor as well. The reality though is that this sticky Velcro here it might last for a little while, but it is not going to stay on there permanently, no matter how good of a job you do of getting all those wrinkles out, and make sure that does it really well. So ideally, if you could sew this in, if you have the ability or means to do that, that would be ideal. But if you don't, a good option, also a good cheap option, is to grab a stapler, just a household stapler, and go through and staple this onto this vinyl. Yes, you're going to be putting, obviously puncturing the vinyl, but this mud flap is going underneath the ground sheet, so it's not going to matter as far as water tightness. And the way I want to do this is to put one in this orientation right on the end, and this is going to help keep that Velcro from peeling up when I go to pull the floor out of the tent over and over, because eventually that's going to just pull itself away from either the mud flap here or the floor itself. So we'll do that, and then I'm going to go about every 4 to 6 inches here and just go along, make sure that this is down onto the vinyl as good as possible, and just staple that on there. This will just give this a little bit more longevity, make it a little bit less of a temporary thing, because if you don't do something to secure this to the vinyl other than just that sticky back, it's going to eventually pull out on you. So if you want to make it a little bit more permanent, either sew it ideally, or if you can't do that, don't have the means to sew, this is going to work as a great option. We went ahead and did that over on this side, and it should work pretty nice. So that is how to set up the White Duck Alpha wall tent. Drop any questions or comments, happy to help if we can. Hope that extra little tip, that modification, was helpful as well. We found it to be great in keeping bugs and critters out. It's pretty easy to do, very inexpensive, and really worth the time in my opinion. Thanks for watching here today, and we will see you next time.